If you're still hungover or jet lagged, it means the weekend technically isn't over yet. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. It was a bank holiday weekend in the UK. It was as well in the US and maybe other places as well. I apologize for not necessarily knowing the holiday schedule everywhere, but I will say that there are probably a lot of people that needed that extra day based on people that I saw and met and the states they were in. I myself flew back on an early flight Monday morning back from London to the US. And I am massively, massively jet lagged and maybe even slightly still hungover. And it's one of those rare experiences where I want to feel that way because that means I'm still connected to the weekend that we just had. Such was the special feeling that was engendered by all of the wonderful memories of the last few days. And so that somewhat explains the reason for this late podcast. Now, I will tell you that Tim and Clive did a beautiful, beautiful sort of quick highlights of the game and thoughts on the moments over on Patreon. And we will be kicking off our summer series on Patreon this week, which means you'll start to get scouting videos for transfer targets. You'll start to get some special new content. And one of the new things that we will be adding to the rotation is a weekly player deep dive, essentially. So we will go into a player from probably not just the starting 11, maybe like 12 or 13, but there's only so many weeks in the summer. So we can only pick so many players. And we'll really summarize their season and talk about how we felt they performed, where they can go from here, what their future at the club is, what their past at the club was, and so on and so forth. So would love to have you for that. But if not, we're just happy to have you here, as I always say, and thrilled to have with me here today two dear friends, I dare say. Tim, you can find him on Twitter at Stilminator. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And Clive, you can find him on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello, hello.
So look, a lot of times I think, let's just get into the football. Nobody wants to hear about the other stuff, but the other stuff is so much of what the last weekend of the season is about and has become about that I think it would be silly to not talk about that because that is part of this whole thing. If you can hear my voice right now, I think you would agree. If you can't hear my voice right now, what I'm about to say next will be really pretty meaningless to you because you do not listen to this podcast. But I think you would agree that it can't just be about the kicking of the ball. I mean, that's the most important thing. It's the thing that binds us all together. But it is that one moment in your life you get to make it to the Emirates, or that every weekend of your life you get to make it to the Emirates, or the local you go to see a game with friends, or the way you interact with people you care about to make yourself feel connected to this whole thing. And that is what this weekend really came to represent. And it was a beautiful goodbye because it was a goodbye to a season that was lovely. And while it may not have culminated in exactly what we wanted, and big thanks to Manchester City for dropping just enough points the last two games to make us have regrets. If they could have just won out, we wouldn't have had any regrets. They had to give us the regrets. So thanks for that. Thanks for that, City. Do us any favors. Then I had to go watch Pep Guardiola on Ted Lasso. I mean, can you please fuck up? But so I want to relive this weekend that was very much, I think, for a lot of people, that extracting these last feelings of joy from a season that was beautiful. And if you are someone who took the time to extend a hand and shake mine or two arms and hug me, which is what I am a hugger. So apologies if you got a hug that was somewhat unsolicited. Thank you. It means the world to me. It really, really does. And it was so lovely to meet so many incredible people. And so, Tim, I'll start with you just on, firstly, we had a whole dinner together on Friday night, which was beautiful. I got to meet your lovely wife. I got to meet Clive's wife, who I can confirm is not just decent, but actually quite a bit lovelier than that, in fact. But Saturday, let's go to Saturday in the Union Chapel event. I think this is going to become an annual tradition for us. It is a special venue in Islington. It's in Arsenal territory. Before the event, you see people walking around just in Arsenal tops. It feels like the right place for that event. And to do it with Andrew is so special because Andrew, he feels like a friend I've known my whole life at this point, just a dear friend, and James as well. That culminating event to me is kind of like, the best way I can say it is it's a thank you, for what we share with everybody throughout the season. And if I take very few memories with me to the grave, one that I will take forever is the sound that the Union Chapel made when Ian Wright stepped out on a stage. And it was so forceful and so visceral that tears started flowing from his eyes. And I can understand it because it really was that powerful. So for me, that was certainly a highlight of this whole incredible journey. What are your high level thoughts on Saturday night and what it meant to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It really set the tone for the weekend. And I think we've all had time to process the fact that we're not going to win the league and all of that. And I think there was just a real spirit of let's put all of that aside, and just kind of celebrate and give thanks for this season. And yeah, you're right. Like Ian's reaction as well. I mean, Ian scored in quite a few cup finals at Wembley. You know, like he's
yeah,
not.
but it's not a podcast, mate. Come on.
he's not unaccustomed to adulation. You know, he's someone who. I mean, he left Arsenal 25 years ago. Like he's quite a long time retired as a footballer. I'm sure he won't thank me for saying that, but he's quite a long time retired. But clearly retained a very special bond with supporters who probably didn't see him play, which I think says a lot about the man himself. It must be said. And look, I know he's not scoring in cup finals at Wembley anymore, but this is a guy who's recognised everywhere he goes. Okay, and by the way, as well, loved outside of the Arsenal fan base as well. Very very kind of well respected, particularly what he does with women's football and all of that. And so, you know, to see him visibly moved by it, I think really, really said a lot, and it was very moving for all of us. It is just that I keep using the phrase "blown away," and I really, really am, and it's so strange because when we do the podcast like this, like of course we have the listeners in mind, and actually we know there are a lot more than can fit in the Union Chapel. But when you actually see the physical manifestation of it laid out in front of you, and you get that kind of that reaction, and you know, you get it's a really good tester for how good your kind of humorous asides are as well.
Do they land?
Exactly,
do people like my Simpsons references? Tim says, wondering.
Yeah, does it land? Do people really want to hear the song "I Touch Myself" at Emirates Stadium?
Kudos to Paul for keeping it weird as ever, and I have to admit he got a lot of laughs, and it's great to see him. By the way, he that video and audio, the video is out on Andrew's on Arsblog's YouTube channel, so you can check it out there. We'll put it out on ours. I think both of us will put it out as a podcast as well. So all of this will be something that you can absorb if you were not able to absorb it in the moment.
Yeah, definitely, and none of it will date, I think, because it's a real
evergreen
sweep of the season. But yeah, it just kind of teed up as it has done the last 2 years. It just teed up the weekend, and it's just it's so nice as well afterwards to go to the bar and just talk to people. And you know, I always said and thought it about football. Like for me, it's just been a key social lever in my life. There's nothing else I could go into a room full of people and talk like that. Like I couldn't get up on the stage and talk about anything else. I'd go to pieces if I went into but like, you know, I was the kind of person like in my government career and all of that. If I, you know, when it's like, oh, there's 45 minutes for networking. For me, that was spent locked in the toilet or outside with the smokers, even though I didn't smoke. Do you know what I mean? Like,
just to get out of it.
With anxiety and horror, and I hate awkward conversation. And I prefer awkward silence to awkward conversation. That's the kind of person I am. But, you know, when it comes to Arsenal, when it comes to football, it's just like, you know, you guys might not forgive me for saying this, and I also I kind of absent you, Elliot, and Andrew from this because it is different when you're presenting. But it's the easiest gig in the world. It really is.
Yeah.
Like I rocked up in a cab about half an hour before we started, having been, you know, at the women's game and working and doing all of that. Hadn't spoken about a running order, anything like that. It was literally go up on stage and talked, and it's quite easy to do because you're talking to friends about football, and everyone that likes football can do that. So we're incredibly privileged, I think, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that all just bled over into Sunday as well.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, I wouldn't say I find it easy all the time, just because there are things that I do around the podcast that take a bit of work that, you know, I wouldn't just go to the pub and do some of the stuff that you do as the person who's hosting or cutting it together or producing it. But I love it. But I found myself really struggling actually in the early part of that show in a way that I didn't last season, because some things started to hit me. My wife was there for one thing. And so connecting her to the community and to this thing that she just sees me do in a room in our house most of the time was really emotional. Being around so many people again was really emotional. But I think obviously the Ian Wright component of it, extremely emotional. What right do I have no pun intended, to be sitting up on stage with Ian Wright. And the only reason I get to do it is because all these incredible people who like what we do have said, you're all right, mate. You can be a part of this, and it's like, you do get a little caught up in that. I certainly did. And I think that to be able to have something that you love in your life that other people love too, that you can share with people like this, it started to overwhelm me a little bit. So I'm glad we were able to get through that section and get to the part 2 where I just got to ask some silly football questions. And Paul obviously talking about the divinals, I touched myself, helped ease some of the nerves there as well, the emotion. Clive, we will, of course, get on the football and the Granite Xhaka and the summer and all of that. But just staying on this moment, obviously, you're sitting right there. You're next to Ian Wright. You're on the stage. You're in front of this incredible group of people watching live and on streams and things. And I think, being there with Andrew, who, frankly, if he never did his pod, I would never have done this one. It is easy to get a little bit stuck in your head just contemplating the specialness of it. But the thing that really strikes me is every single person you meet, you shake hands with, you share a drink with, you share a hug with, they're knowledgeable, they're kind, they're warm. It's really wonderful. And Ian even made the point. He said to us, what you guys have here is really special. This is unique. This is something different. And for Ian Wright to recognize that, I thought was a huge credit to the people that listened, to the people that were there,
Yeah, I was missing him on the way down to game on Sunday, and that's what he said, right? And he's shocked by the energy of the group and the crowd. And we often say this, don't we, that we are incredibly lucky with our audience. And those words are well chosen. We are incredibly lucky with our audience. And I'm starting to recognize a lot of them now, actually. And due to the fact I think I only missed 3 home games this year, it's quite a lot for me. And I've got to see these people over the course of the year. As Tim said on WhatsApp, you guys don't get to see this all the time. And we don't see it. What Tim experienced at the weekend is not every weekend, but we get smittens of that all the time. And it's a reminder that that what we're doing is okay, But also, I got to be honest with you, I did feel a bit more nervous this year going into the whole thing, because last year it was a surprise. The venue was a surprise. The fact that people wanted to come was a surprise. This year, I knew everything had sold out in 20 seconds, and I knew the venue, and I didn't know about Ian Wright, but that sort of stuns me for the first half hour because, I did see his career live, big majority of it, and so that's somebody I travelled the country to go and watch, and so it takes a bit of adjusting to. And in the end, we're just blokes, right, that try to put out good content for people that like to listen to good content. You're just human. And when you're sitting next to that guy, I couldn't help but think for a second, wow. And Elliot did stop you for interrupting him, but it still was still good, right? It was still I was a little bit more polite. So yeah, the whole experience, I like the words you said about saying thank you, because that's what we try to do when we're going around talking to people, because there are lots of podcasts to listen to out there. There are lots of different things to listen to, but people choose to share their Arsenal experience with us. And what maybe they don't realise is how big a part of our Arsenal experience they are, right? And I think my Arsenal experience this year has been the greatest of my entire watching life. Football is not just about the cup finals and the winners, the semi-finals at Wembley, the Copenhagens, the Paris 2006, the semi-final before Paris 2006, the Villarreal. It's not all about those high glory moments. It is about the moments where maybe you don't always succeed, and it's who you share those experiences with, right? And so maybe what we don't say enough, it's not just about the patrons, because not everyone's a patron. Everyone that listens, that wants to interact, you add to our experience, and it makes me have a sense of responsibility going forward, that I want to make sure that we continue to do what we do in an authentic, genuine way to add to their experience as well. And so I felt that sense of responsibility at the weekend. I was a bit quieter. However, I barely drunk. It was just overwhelming. It was overwhelming. And I just want to say thank you.
Here's how overwhelming it was, Clive. You're not supposed to bring any alcohol into the actual chapel part of the chapel. And we had beers backstage. And I had one in my hand at the intermission I wasn't even really drinking. I was just holding it for something to hold, like a nervous tick almost, and walked right out onto the stage with it. And then I looked down and everyone's got their waters and I've got a Kronenberg in my hand. Like,
exactly.
Oh, shit, what have I
And
done?
it is true. It is truly overwhelming, and it takes a bit of adjusting to. And the only regret, I said to Tim yesterday, the only regret that I have is that you don't get to everybody that you'd like to get to. And there are people that you'd like to spend a bit more time talking to, and that's not being big-headed or anything like that. That's just like, that's what we're about, right? We're about the community, and you want to get to every single person you can get to, and you just can't. And that's the regrets that I have. And
I agree with that.
I'm sure we'll do something again, right? And it's not about us enjoying the great time. It's about all of us enjoying the great time. And I want to make sure we do more of these type of things.
Yeah, and for this episode, even I was a little thoughtful about, do we need to discuss the event? Because people are here first and foremost to hear about the football and Xhaka scoring on his final day and the comments of the manager and the performance on the pitch.
Yeah, we have to do that, right? We have to do that.
Yeah, but I do think that there are certain things when we come together as a community that are worth sharing with people who are far away, who don't get to be there, just so maybe you get to feel a little bit like you were a part of it and know that next time, if you're there, that it's going to be a special occasion. I do feel sorry for my wife a little bit where, I feel like everybody who was willing to shake a hand or give a hug and just say, hey, love the podcast or thanks for the podcast. I can just see her being like, oh, he's going to be impossible to live with after this, isn't he? So it's like, it's like if someone came up to me like,
we had that discussion on your behalf, and we were watching you work the crowd. And as Tim would attest, Elliot loves it, doesn't he, mate? He absolutely loves it. He's in his element. So
I love saying hi to everybody. I love sharing a drink with everybody. It is absolutely my favorite thing, because I definitely have that imposter syndrome that we all get. That who the fuck am I? And then here are people that want to say hi or share a drink or give you a hug. And it's like, give me the hug, give me the drink. Let's go. Let's do this. And I echo your sentiments, Clive, that like, if I could spend just that bit more time with every single person, I would. And that's why I love coming on this pod, though, because it's a way to spend time with everybody. Everybody, you guys who are here, and Paul, who will obviously be on Run the Future, and the guests that come on, and Andrew and James, and then everybody who listens. It's beautiful. So we'll finish patting each other and ourselves and the listeners on the back momentarily here and get to the Sunday of it, which was itself a love-in, a carnival. We titled the Patreon episode Arsenal Disneyland. I don't know that there's a better way to put it, because it felt that way. And the way the bars were heaving, the pubs were heaving at noon for a 4:30 kickoff, and the way the Armory was heaving, and just the smiles on faces. And I do feel bad for Tanya, right? Because it was like sunny, 25, we won 5-0. She's like, oh, going to the Arsenal's great. It's always like this, right? It's like just waiting for the time she decides to come over and it's pissing down and it's 1-1 to Crystal Palace in the 90th minute and people are screaming. But yeah, it'll be hard to top that just in terms of the entire environment. Tim, I think the nice thing about this last day is that, and you touched on this, it was a chance to send off the team and say goodbye to the season in a really positive way. I didn't get a sense that there was a lot of frustration or angst or anxiety in the air about anything really. Andrew mentioned on the Arscast, but I will again, when we were walking down the street towards the Tollington and you hear the songs from almost like a mile away, and the song that's singing is "We nearly won the league. We nearly won the league. Now you're gonna believe us." And like, there was a bit of that sardonic atmosphere, but just a lot of togetherness. When you think about just going into this final day and how you felt about it, what were the prevailing emotions? Excited to get a chance to say goodbye, a little bit of regret, joy tinged with sadness. Where were you on the sort of spectrum of feelings about the final day? Because there is always something bittersweet about a final day, whether it's a good or bad occasion, because you're saying goodbye to Arsenal for a few months,
Yeah, exactly. And for me, I was determined to just wring every drop of joy out of this. And you referenced that, we called it Disneyland Clive called it Disneyland on the Patreon pod. I think I said at the live event, I think I predicted 4-0. I just really had the sense this was going to be exactly as it turned out, that Wolves were going to be only half there and we were going to give them a lovely little smashing to send everyone off into the summer. Sun was shining, etc., etc. But one of the reasons In fact, like, if you'll forgive the slightly crude analogy, it was the whole day was like MDMA, to be honest. It was just everyone, if you, I don't know, like, I'm not saying I've been in these situations, but if you've ever been at a rave or anything like that, where other people are in those situations and everyone's just hugging each other, and it was a bit like that. It was a sunshine day. But one of the reasons I was really keen to wring every drop of joy out of this is not just about saying thank you about what's conspired this season and the great times that we've had. I also feel like, and I don't want this to sound maudlin because it's natural, I almost feel like this is the close of a chapter as well, because things are going to be different next season in terms of expectation. We know that the manager, like, Ruthless is his middle name, I think. Yep. I think he is going to do in his mind what he thinks needs to be done and all of that. Next season, we're going to be expecting to be in the title race, and we can't take for granted that we will be. And so things will change a little bit next season, whereas the last 2 seasons, I mean, we've made 2 jumps of 3 places. We've gone 8th, 5th, 2nd. And, that's a big ascent, actually, in 2 seasons. And we've been on this wonderful kind of almost unexpected ride, I think. I'm not sure maybe some people, but I didn't really see this coming, to be honest. Like the end of the 2021 season when we finished 8th and we were thinking, God, how do we get Willian out of the club? And this Aubameyang contract hasn't really worked. And we've had no fans in the stadium for a year. Like, I didn't see this coming off the back of that. Now, last summer, I definitely, like, at the end of last season, I thought, yeah, there's something in this group, but I didn't expect the jump to be this big again. And so we've been like a surprise. We're not going to be a surprise anymore. So I do think things are going to change a bit next year in terms of the sentiment and the atmosphere, and that's absolutely fine. I don't think the manager would have it any other way as well, but that's going to make things a bit different. So for me, this had a real, like, not just last day of the school term feeling, but like maybe when you leave secondary school or something, or you're about to go to university or something like that, and you're like, okay, shit changes now, stuff's different, and that's very exciting as well. But there's a little bit of anxiety in there. So that, for me, that it wasn't just a retrospective; it was largely a retrospective thing, just to be able to put everything aside. We've had a long time to process it and say thank you for re-engaging us and reconnecting us with this team. We are still in what history will regard as like the immediate. I mean, look, COVID hasn't gone away, obviously, but so you understand what I mean when I say post-COVID, in like a policy sense. We're still in that, and it's going to be a long time before we're able to look back and say, oh wow, those years after, like, think, it takes time and perspective to work all of that out, and we're still in that immediate kind of post period. So I think things are just going to be a bit different next season, and so I just really went in with that feeling. And what was lovely was, I think everyone went in with that feeling, absolutely everyone, and that really brought that sense of connection. Just consolidated it. Yeah.
I mean, it almost felt preseason-y in a way, or like a testimonial for this team, for this season, like a season testimonial. And Wolves were willing to participate in that sentiment as well, by the way. I think you hit on something really important. The club cannot, nor can the fans, presume next season will just be a step up. That's, football sport, unfortunately, does not work that way. You get a key injury in preseason, you get a bad result early, and something goes wrong, and suddenly your season is in a place you don't expect it to be. Now, I'm not saying I expect any of that to happen. I do think we'll be good next season, but this season was very special. I mean, I don't think people have fully clocked what it means to be on a 100-point pace 60% of the way through a football season. You're not supposed to be on that pace. We've never been on it before, and to score almost 90 goals. And by the way, I will mention, because we're not going to do this today, if this is your first season with us, we do a full season summary. We revisit our preseason predictions and compare the outcomes. We do quick review of the player summaries, not just the deep dives we're going to do on Patreon. So we have we'll do, a look ahead to what has to be done this summer. So that's all coming up. This is just going to be sort of more about this particular occasion. Clive, firstly, you get to go to the game a lot. The game's a lot. Tim obviously goes basically to everything and always has. I went 3 times this season. Once was at Leicester, twice was at the Emirates. It is still a rare enough treat for me that when I get there and I get in the seat and I see the grass and I see the players in the flesh, like it still really moves me. It's really special. And I have to thank Ben for the seat he gave me and the wonderful conversation. And, and his friend Gab, who I met, and Nick, who's sitting behind him, like just a great group to be there with. But yeah, it was really special to be there. And so I just really tried to soak it up. But what I will say is that I know it seems dumb, but I'm so glad the team played the way they did and sent us off the way they did. And the occasion was brilliant. The songs that were going up was brilliant, but the focus was Granite Xhaka. There was a thanks Granite sign that went up over by the Ashburton Army. Let's talk about the Granite of this just a little bit. What were your feelings about Xhaka going in, and on a scale of 0 to 100%, why were you 100% convinced he was going to score? Because I was convinced he would score in this game. What were your thoughts on the occasion and the Granite Xhaka component of it?
Yeah, well, he played centre forward the whole game, making sure he did score. Right, I think
Lewis hat trick.
He's just stood on the penalty spot and said, "Give me the ball." So, I don't think he was. He was certainly part of the front 5, right? Which we are experts on, aren't we? So, yeah, it's just part of the fun, mate. To be honest, and I think it's a really good. Let's take it out. We can all say we love Granit Xhaka. We love what he's doing this season. I think there's some good stuff that Arteta said about how he challenged him pre-season and how he came back fitter and lighter, and he looked it, didn't he? He looked lighter of foot. He looked better, more athletic, and we did spot that quite early. And so I'm really pleased for him that he's reinvented himself in a slightly different way. That's not like to protect some of the opinions that we've all had of him in the past. It's great to see somebody in any workplace adjust to the changed environment that's around them to make themselves as important as they previously were. And if anything, it's more important than he previously was due to the age profile of the rest of the squad. So for someone to adapt in the workplace like that, I've got nothing but absolute admiration for them. And I'm also really admire the fact that he potentially, we don't know 100%, has chosen this moment to exit the room. I think that takes a lot of strength as well, wherever the reasons are, because it's the easiest thing just to keep going. But sometimes you need to leave the room when you're just still wanted, and it's important that we get used to the fact that players that are incredibly useful for us can leave because we need to evolve to a better place, right? And for those that are going through this trauma at the moment around certain players leaving, wanting them all to stay, but wanting us to get better as well. And the moment we lose 2 games next year, not going to be having it. But actually, how are we going to get better unless we renew the squad? And that means we're going to need to see a few people go that maybe we really like, we may not have seen fully develop, or they've got another year or 2 in their legs for us. But that's not going to work. We've been there before. I've learned this through Elliot, having people in the squad that are gone over their age profile or their financial peak, and we just not had a chance to renew, and we're giving people away. So I'm really pleased for everybody, if that makes sense, that we're getting a little bit of compensation. The player has a new role, working under a potentially brilliant young coach in Xabi Alonso, and who's to know that could be part of what he wants to do going forward, learning from a young coach, supporting a young coach. Could end up being a player coach in a 4-year contract, for example, if buts and maybes here. And who knows where he'll end up in his future. He could be right back at our club doing a role. You just never know, right? So he's opening up a new window to his life. I think it's wonderful from that respect to see the appreciation for him. It's nice, isn't it? He wasn't getting that appreciation when he charged over in the corner of the penalty box against Brighton and took someone down in a crucial game. It wasn't the same appreciation. So things can change very quickly. And again, it helps open. I think I spoke at the weekend about keeping your mind open with player analysis. Sometimes what you see is not what's real. And Tim spoke at the weekend actually about the reaction of the stadium versus reaction of line. I can remember beginning of last preseason when he was about to go. Didn't go. He ended up staying. Or what time he was going to go to Roma. He ended up staying. And I thought it was quite unpopular online. I went to the stadium for a preseason Emirates Cup game, and when he stood up to warm up, he got standing ovation. Again, lesson to myself: don't always what you read online is not always the real deal. Take a broad view if you are able to before you land on a certain position. But hey, I'm really pleased for him.
Yeah. I think it's also, just to be fair, I think the online thing is an amplification issue because, like, we want you to stay, we want you to say, Granit Xhaka, we want you to stay. That song went up at the stadium. I'd be willing to bet the reason that song went up is because everyone knows he's not staying, right? Like, and that's not to say people don't love him. I think it is the perfect moment for club and player and fans to say goodbye, to celebrate what he did do this season, and move forward, as you've said, Clive. I think in all of us, there's a complexity to our feelings about things. Online, some of that complexity gets stripped away, often to the negative or to the positive, right? People just broadcast their strongest feeling. But then I think in the ground, when that person is there and you want to hug each other, you want to celebrate, you want to be happy. No one, I don't think anybody wants to be miserable. Sometimes the football makes you miserable. You don't have a choice. So I think what happens is, at the ground, you see the player and you see the sunshine and you see everybody there and it's all good. And you sort of try to extract or amplify the joy of that. And sometimes online, different things get amplified. Like I will say my honest truth. It's all I can give you. I loved that he scored. I loved that he got the love. I sang the Granit Xhaka song. I celebrated the season he gave us. I think it is a perfect time for club and player and fan base to move on from one another. You don't get a redemption arc like that very often. And the one way to screw it up is just stay too long and have the arc back the other way, because arcs have a tendency to do that. If he scored one goal and had 3 red cards next season, all of this good feeling would ebb away. So I think it's perfect. Tim, he gets the brace. He could have had the hat trick, if we're being honest, on his left foot. It was right there for him. I think some people were wondering if we got a penalty, would he take the penalty? There was certainly some questions about could he get a red card? That might have been a nice send off, but he did not do that, thankfully. So all things being equal, I thought it was a great moment for him. And you know what I will do, by the way? I'll chop up some of my video from the game and from the weekend and put that up on Patreon as a slideshow, video show, whatever, and try to put some things together for YouTube as well so you can share it. But it was, I think you rarely get perfect moments. And when you get perfect moments, don't look that gift horse in the mouth, accept it. I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but Tim, just quickly with Shaq, I mean, do you get that sense it's the perfect ending? And when you get the perfect ending, don't screw it up. You know what I mean? Like it was such a lovely day and moment for him. I do think it's funny that when Mikel was asked about it after the game, he was said on Granit Xhaka leaving the club, you know that's news for me. I mean, I don't think so, mate. But yeah, just a final thought on what I think was the most unexpectedly special moment shared between a fan base and a player that you could ever have seen coming.
Yeah, absolutely. It underscored the whole day. Actually, like it fitted in very nicely with the theme of the day, and was one of the dominant themes. And if you'd have told me a couple of years ago that the whole Emirates would be singing Granit Xhaka, we want you to stay, not sure I would have believed you. Put it that way, but just really happy for him.
Can I stop you there, because I want to get your honest opinion of that. If it wasn't announced that he was leaving, or if it was more of a rumor, and people were like, do you think everybody wants Granit Xhaka to stay, or do you think it's that like perfect moment of like, we're going to pour love on you because we also know that we're saying this goodbye? Everybody's kind of sharing that,
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure there are, people will feel many different ways about it. But I don't think as divisively as maybe we used to disagree on Xhaka.
Yeah, fair point.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just the right day to really spotlight him, and I say he spotlighted himself by scoring 2 goals. I mean, I don't mean that he was deliberately trying to hog the limelight or anything like that, but just someone whose qualities we've been able to appreciate more in the last couple of seasons, and I think. I think we've kind of been surprised by how he's adapted to that new role, but really I think what's happened is that he wasn't really suited to the old role. He wasn't really suited in a distribution sense. He was fine being that 6 and kind of whipping the ball around on his left foot, but athletically, I don't think it was for him. And I think we've described him more than once as an endurance athlete. And actually, I can see now why Arsene Wenger was confused about whether he was a 6 or whether he was a box-to-box midfielder, because athletically, I think he fits that much more when he's kind of running in a straight line rather than, oh my God, we've lost the ball and I've got the whole width of the pitch. Like, that didn't suit him because he's not a sprinter. He's not a Gabriel. He's not a Saliba. He's not going to get over into those spaces and cover those spaces. But actually what he is someone who can and will chug up and down all day. And actually, as much as we've been surprised by how he's adapted to this role, I think what he showed us is this is his role, and that the one he had before probably just exposed too many of his weaknesses.
Yeah, well said. Well, we did a couple of interesting things in this game. We obviously went with the same lineup we went with previously in the Forest game. Thomas Partey playing the Zinchenko role. So he inverted, right? And he came into midfield. Kivior playing more of the Ben White role. He got created the width, which I think suits us better when we have Trossard versus Martinelli, right? Because Trossard likes to be more of an interior. And it all just worked in a really lovely way. There were some great flicks and tricks from Odegaard. I thought that there was just good play all around. And it was like the perfect final day for the front 3. I thought Trossard had a couple of assists, and Saka gets a goal after a bit of a fallow period. He gets to feel the love. It was a beautiful goal, shift and shoot. And Jesus gets an assist and a goal. Clive, that I don't think that we need to analyze the formation and the tactics too much because it's the final game of the season, and I think it's not a system we're going to see a lot. But do you think it tells us maybe a bit about when we don't have Zinchenko, that the alternative, because it's very hard to replace a Zinchenko like for like, is to invert on the other side, or that maybe our backup plan for left back will be someone like a Kivior? So like when we don't play with Zinchenko, we'll flip it, we'll invert to the other side. I thought the balance looked good. It's hard to judge against a Wolves team that really didn't care to be there at all, but that might be an interesting takeaway, that if you don't have Zinchenko, that you then don't try to just replace him on the left. You flip the whole thing around, and it worked fine this game.
Yeah, we are a 3-2 build-up team, back 5, front 5, and we are looking at different configurations of that 3-2. And I was so pleased to see this again, because I thought it was fine at Forest. What wasn't fine was the lead into the game and what was on the game. Our mental approach wasn't great, and some of the positioning with new combinations wasn't perfect. But I thought there was enough there to think about for next season. I've had my eyes on Kivior for a left back for a while, and I spoke to that on the podcast. So that was interesting to see how he did. I think from that area, he has the ability to find a long ball, find a long diagonal. That will come with more confidence. He's decent in the air. He's quite quick, so I don't see any problem there. He's good on the ball. That's something to be developed. Again, just think 3-2. So you want your centre back, full back types. We've got another one, which is great. We got another inverted player that can play from the right. I thought he was better in this game, a bit more confident in positioning, to be more inverted. Again, that's something to be developed. Jorginho then has he's got nice comfort around him with Trossard quite near and Partey to the right. And so in a game where we weren't massively tested after the first goal, we could see his go forward talents from the back 5. Lovely clip pass over the top. So yeah, I never think these games are wasted, Elliot. And what they are telling us is we are trying stuff out, and that may say, okay, we've seen that work. So no need to go and buy a new left back. We may go and buy a new right back, and who bring something else to the party that we haven't currently got. will we buy a centre back that can play both sides? You know, comfortable playing on the left, comfortable playing on the right. You know, we haven't really got that. Case to future-proof us against injury. Again, seeing where we are with Tomiyasu, is he going to be a left-back cover? Quite easily be a left-back cover for us. And if Kivior's playing a centre-back. So there's so many things we could do in that configuration now, right? I like where we're going. You know, I like this thought process. What I haven't got to yet in my mind is what you're going to do in the front five to create depth, what you're going to do in the left centre mid stroke left 8 position, what that position looks like, how it's going to be defined. I think that's a longer discussion to have there. The sprinting ability that we need to add in wide areas to make sure we protect the legs of the 2 superstars which we know and love that have new contracts. We have to backfill those properly with a level of quality, and don't be afraid of that. So, yeah, and do we do something at centre forward? You know, and so there's some lovely, lovely, lovely questions to discuss over the summer, which are far easier to discuss this summer than last summer because we have a clear idea of just how we're going to play. Mate, this time last year, we weren't talking about inverted fullbacks, mate. We weren't talking about Zinchenko. We had an idea we might get a better centre forward, but we had no idea of this build-up patterns and technical control in the centre of the pitch because our left back did 2 jobs. We didn't have that in our heads. That was not in our pre-season previews. You know, so what we're going to see new this year, that's what excites me. Something that maybe we haven't even thought of yet, and I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. We got 22 goals and assists from Odegaard, 25 goals and assists from Xhaka, 20 goals and assists from Martinelli, 17 from Jesus in basically 60% of a season or half a season, 14 from Xhaka. We got 11 from Trossard, but 10 assists. He's the second assister on the team, only to Xhaka, and he was only here for half the season. Just incredible output. What is it, 88 goals? 88 goals. I mean, you know, I if you enjoyed this season only for the title challenge, I'd understand it, but I enjoyed the hell out of it for the football and the goals we scored. And, you know, the fact that it tailed off a little bit defensively at the end of the season, we lost sight of that, but we always looked dynamic and dangerous throughout the season. I enjoyed it. Before we get to the lap of appreciation and some end of season thoughts, Tim, the Granit Xhaka send-off was special. Not everybody had the exact same experience of the season, and there are 2 that I'm sort of curious about. We think Tierney is off. He got subbed on, not a lot of fanfare there. He got off the pitch pretty quickly from the lap of appreciation, by the way. Not a lot of fanfare for Smith Rowe either. I mean, he got a big clap when he came on, but not really an appearance where he was noticed. Certainly no big end of season moment for him and an uncertain future that he heads off into this summer. Maybe not. Maybe that's just us overlaying our expectations onto a situation that doesn't exist. But thoughts on either of their appearances, their day that they had, and what the future holds for them?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty perfunctory for both of them, particularly
That's a good word.
Yep. Yeah, maybe a little bit unfortunate that I think he was subbed on after a goal, and there was still, you know, it wasn't like I get the feeling that, and I imagine this is probably in accordance with the players' wishes, that maybe he doesn't want a big fanfare because he's going in if he's going, I think he is, but if he's going in very different circumstances to Xhaka, who's been a starter all season long, and has been a starter since pretty much he walked in the door, and whereas Tierney's lost his place, and I think Tierney has got that kind of professional pride where I think the thing is with Tierney, it's been clear, I think, for a little while that maybe he's a bit disconnected from this group, and I don't mean that in a he hates everyone and everyone hates him. I'm sure that's not the case, but you know, I think he's seen the writing on the wall for a while. He's probably had in his mind for a while, I don't want this anymore. I want to go and play, which is that I want players to think that, you know, particularly players like Tierney, who's got a lot to offer. I don't want him thinking, I could do this again next season. This is all right. Like, you want players who don't want to be. That's the kind of that's the paradox, right? You want squad players who don't want to be squad players. We've all read the story this week about a particular squad player who apparently, we're hearing the stories, is quite happy to stay that way for the last year of their contract.
Yep.
Which is fair enough. The club gave them that contract. So no, I want squad players who are like, no, I want to play. And so, you know, that's all kind of fine. I think I'm quite interested though in, and like the mood music with Smith Rowe as well looks very much that way. His sub appearances haven't been great, but then they've all been lousy dead minutes, which I think tells you something anyway. But I think really you referenced it there in terms of the amount of goals we've been able to score this season. Like, I'm looking at us at the back experimenting with things like this, and Clive explained it there all very well, where it's a bit like, let's try Partey at right back and Kivior at left back and see, you know, I get the impression they want one more versatile defender and maybe that pushes Rob Holding out the door, but they're just trying to figure out, do we want a left back, you know, do we want like a centre back that plays right back or a centre back that plays left back? I suspect that they only bought Kivior 6 months ago. I suspect they've already made their mind up that he can play at left back, and that was a big part of why they bought him. I think it's having a look at Partey at right back. I think that's what they're interested in. And then that will kind of set the mood music for what happens with Tomiyasu, and do we need something there? What do we need there? Etc. etc. Whereas in attack, I think we need more. I think we need more in attack because, listen, Trossard's been a great addition, really great addition. That makes it like 4 players for 3 positions that you'll be very comfortable with. We need 6. We need 6 players in that front 3 who you'd be very, very comfortable with. Smith Rowe is clearly not that in the manager's mind. I don't think Nketiah is either. He's another one who had, obviously it doesn't look like he's going, but he's another one who had another fairly perfunctory substitute appearance and someone we don't really talk about anymore. And I think he's fallen to the 3rd choice in that kind of centre-forward profile. So, you know, look, we've been relying too much on Martinelli and Saka. Just look at the minutes. But like we talk about this with Saka, we don't talk about it with Martinelli, probably because, you know, we talk about academy players in a different way and we hold them a bit dearer. But Martinelli, just the same. Like every game pretty much, and he's so intense with it and he just looks like a machine, but he's not a machine. And you know, we need someone who can take some of those minutes as well. And I think that's where we need something like defense. Like we're talking about like one more maybe versatile player. We're not talking about someone to come in and transform that defense, you know.
No.
We're probably looking at another Kivior, Tomiyasu, let Tierney go. Whereas up front, I think a good wide forward, a good centre forward. I don't know that we'd get both done in this window, but I think it's the attack where we've got quality, we need numbers.
I regret to inform everybody we are linked to someone called Bowie, and that's just going to reignite that debate. And I know everybody's going to be frustrated by that. Clive, it sounds like you want to jump in on that.
No, as Tim was talking about defence, names are flying from my head. There's 3 players. Bowie, the one that Elliot has just annihilated. An interesting one is Mark Gay from Crystal Palace. Can play centre back on both sides. Decent on the ball, good in one-on-ones. Known to the league. The price looks a bit heavy, but a good player that probably needs a move. He's not too bad. Fresneda's come into the press again today. So this is an interesting one. There's a guy at RB Leipzig called Mohamed Simikan that looks quite nice, but I don't think he's that great on the ball actually. But I just think, back 5, 3-2. Remember, Elliot, we sat here and discussed at length the loss of Saliba, and what did we lose? We lost build-up.
Yeah.
So build-up is going to be one of our key principles of play. When you look at these signings, think build-up. Back 5, think build-up. First phase, how good they're on the ball. How can they pass through the lines? All the stuff that you like, mate. Your attack mindset.
Yep.
When you're on the YouTubes, think build-up. First phase, 3-2, build-up. Can they build up? You know, and then we can think about the front 5, which I agree with Tim 100%. And the way he wrote it down was perfect. We need 2 in there, and we need to be brave. You know, and some people say, "Well, we scored enough goals. We scored by committee. We did really, really well, but we need to add depth because we have not had a 2-pronged approach on 2 different competitions without a break in the middle of the season. We don't know the robustness and the stamina of this group, and we cannot pretend the way we've done it the last 2-3 years is going to work. It won't work. We've got to change our mindset.
We need to do. Please. Mm-hmm,
I just want to, just one quick thing on the defence as well. The other thing that's really interesting about experimenting with Partey at right back, and I'm fairly open minded on that. I think it's worked fine, but at the same time, we have to acknowledge that both of the games kind of very, very different temperature wise. But we probably found Ben White as a centre back again. And seen him play there. And look, why did we buy him? Because he'd played right back, he'd played right of a back three, he'd played centre back, we bought him for his kind of versatility, and not because we thought he was going to be like a plug-in utility man, but because he can and like the last 2 games we've kind of gone, oh yeah, this is the Ben White of last season. We liked him as well. As much as we like Ben White the right back, actually Ben White the centre back's pretty good as well. And yeah, I think finding that again has been interesting.
I'll say this about positional football. It's educated me on something, which is I used to think of versatility as, oh, you're not great at anything, so you get plugged in where you're available, right? You're a useful cog to have. But what I think I'm learning is with positional football, it's about where can you play on the pitch? What parts of the pitch can you operate on, right? So with a Ben White, you say he can operate wide in that overlapping fullback role and take some of the touchline zone 5 or zone 1, whatever you want to call it, space in attack and drop back and tuck in next to a center back. He can operate in central spaces, right? He can operate in the different zones on the pitch, right? I mean, you look at Zinchenko. Zinchenko's nailed down a place. But it's his versatility that nailed him down in the sense that he can operate in midfield spaces so he can be part of the 2 and the 3-2 buildup. Just some things that I think the word versatility almost used to be a way to damn someone with faint praise. That's not the case anymore. We got to get onto the lap of appreciation. We got to get on to Arteta's comments, some of the reception the players received, and some goodbyes to the season here a little bit. I'd be remiss, by the way, if I didn't say Jorginho absolutely ran the show in this game. He was spectacular. It is a really weird signing for me that I don't think I've gotten my head around because we didn't ultimately win the league, but he gave us some big moments and big performances that kept our season going. He is, you know me. I love to point out when people are getting older, he says getting older, and he is getting older in a midfield that is getting older. So I do wonder what the future of that move is, but would be remiss if we did not say that he was brilliant. I thought he was excellent in this game and faded some balls over the top into runners that led to some beautiful goals. Clive?
I just say, I remember when Arteta first joined, and 2 players he wanted to buy was Jorginho and John Stones. And he did that was quite early in his reign. This was John Stones going through a dodgy period with Man City on the bench for ages. And I remember posting, this is a great signing, and people told me he's not as good as Holding. That shows you how things can change, right? So John Stones is now the main man.
Do you think he's as good as Holding?
I think he's the best defender in Europe. Now he's had a chance to recover himself. And Jorginho turned out and went to Champions League and won that. And it just shows you that he knew what he wanted really, really quickly. And Ben White really is our John Stones, and that's why he was my player of the season on Saturday night. Because not only did he can do the back 5 stuff, he was a part of the front 6, mate. He was overlapping, going around the outside. For positional play, he is a wonderful buy, and I hope he gets his reward in a new contract.
We'd also be remiss if we didn't say that, with the summer here, it gets hot, it can be uncomfortable, and it's really important to shave your privates. So our good friends at Manscaped are back. Father's Day is coming up in the States. Hey, guys, Clive or Tim, when is Father's Day in the UK?
Some point in June.
Yeah, June 20th, something like that.
Same for us. So there's time. There's time for to celebrate yourself or women if you have a partner who is a father, or if you have a father. I would say if you're a daughter and you want to celebrate your father, nothing would be weirder than getting him tools that are designed to shave his privates. But sometimes we get weird here, and we certainly don't shame anybody for anything except ourselves quite frequently. And I'm doing it presently as I speak. But the total package is here for Father's Day. This just feels weird putting all this together, doesn't it? Join the 8 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get 20% off and free shipping with code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. So couple of things you can get. You can get the Performance Package 4.0, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0. The Essential Lawnmower 4.0 is my tool of choice for body grooming, I would say. It is waterproof. It is cordless. It has skin-safe technology with ceramic blades. It's just one of these things that I feel like, look, we do this. This is a thing we do. So you can pick the tool you want to use. You want to use an old razor that's been sitting there for ages, or what you want to do it out of the shower, and then you got to figure out how to clean up all the mess. Just do it in the shower with the Lawnmower 4.0, and you're going to feel great, and it's going to go great. There's the Weed Whacker 2.0 for nose and ear hair trimming. I feel like it's the weirdest thing that people shave and they'll do their hair and they'll look great, and then there's like ear hair or nose hair, and it's like, come on, then you got to finish it. You got to finish it. Don't be Gabriel Jesus. Don't miss the sitter. Get rid of the ear and nose hair, and kudos to Gabriel Jesus, who had a beautiful headed goal, and then when the Red Sea parted and he was in on goal, he missed the easy one, didn't get the shot off. So it was sort of a perfect day for him. Where was I? I don't know. Oh yeah, there's the Boxers 2.0. I love them. I use them for workouts. There are toners and deodorants. Get the perfect package for your father. Oh, just get, get the Performance Package 4.0. Use promo code ArsenalVision. You get 20% off and free shipping, 20% off and free shipping with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. And you can do that now, and I can move on from this, I would say, disgustingly uncomfortable advertising read that I've done here. By the way, thanks to everyone who said they wish my ad reads went longer. Could they be 10 minutes? Could they be 15 minutes? Let's see. We push ourselves. We're going to be in the Champions League next season. Maybe we can go even longer. I'm really excited, by the way. We have a new sponsor, and it's a big sponsor. It is a brand we know, Oakley sunglasses. I am really, really excited. I wear Oakley sunglasses. They're one of the brands that I have chosen. The Oakley model that I wear, what is that model called actually? HSTM, maybe. I love them. They have prism technology. Like, you have to protect your eyes. You need polarized lenses. I'm not going to tell you all about prism technology because I do it badly and you don't want me to do that. Why don't you do the research at Oakley.com? By the way, Kylian Mbappe wears Oakley, so there's a good chance that if you wear Oakley, you will play as well as Kylian Mbappe in your five-a-side. So just something to think about. Maybe we just get some Oakley sunglasses on Eddie Nketiah or something, and then he just goes on to be Kylian Mbappe and he can push Alexander Lacazette for the Golden Boot. So yes, I do love Oakley, and I do love the styles. The other thing about Oakley is they're everyday sunglasses. Like, that's so one of the things I love is the way they fit, the quality of them. I have trouble with feeling like sunglasses are going to fall off or they're flimsy. Oakleys feel really, really well made, but they are for every day. And that prism technology is for wearing every day. So when you wear Oakley, there is really more than meets the eye. Try it for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. I've worn a lot of sunglass brands in my life. I can assure you Oakley is not just great looking, but great quality. Head over to Oakley.com for more information today. That's Oakley.com. Do it now. Clive? Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Got it. Okay. I think we should get to lap of appreciation stuff. Tim, I love the lap of appreciation. It is a favorite part of the seasons that I've had these last two seasons, because I just think you see a lot out there and you get a lot of joy. But this one, my goodness, last season, I think good number of people stuck around. This season, it felt like 95% of people, minus the Wolves fans, and there was something going on with the police officers in the Wolves fan section at the end of the game, so hopefully everything was okay there. But everybody stayed, and it was loud, and the cheers were going up. The women got to come out first. They got to put the Conti Cup on the center circle. They got to be celebrated, as they rightly should, as part of the club. And then the men came out, and Odegaard had some words, and then Mikel Arteta decided that he was going to speak, except he couldn't because he was absolutely drowned out by people singing his song. I know that people like Mikel Arteta. I don't think it's fair to say that there's many doubters anymore. I mean, there's always going to be some. And I would say that if you have doubts, I'd love to hear them. I think there are still always fair criticisms of every coach. There's fair criticisms of Pep Guardiola, right? But the intensity of the enthusiasm with which his song was sung, and the smile on his face on the big screen as he attempted to get a word in, it was really, really a special moment. Have you ever experienced, because you've been to quite a few lap of appreciations, including in seasons where we've won the league at White Hart Lane, we won the league at Anfield, we won it at the Lane, Stamford Bridge, Old Trafford. How did this compare to some of those great lap of appreciation moments, and in particular that Mikel Arteta moment?
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie. it doesn't really compare to 2004 or even 2006, the last
Fair
game
enough,
at Highbury.
Yeah.
But it's close. Actually, one of my earliest memories of the Emirates, and I really remember it just because this is just an illustration of how life changes, right? Arsene Wenger. It was October 2006. We played Watford, so it was the fifth or sixth home game at the stadium, and it was the 10th anniversary of Wenger being there. And there was a presentation on the pitch for Wenger, and everyone was chanting 10 more years. And what's really interesting is on his 20th anniversary, there was no presentation. That was kind of kept quieter because people didn't feel like that anymore. You know, how that kind of light and airy feeling can go. I mean, 10 years is not quickly, but you know how it can go, how it can sour. But I thought first off, bringing the women's team out in the way they did. By the way, the format was exactly the same for the women at Meadow Park as well. The day before they had their last game, Nigel Mitchell was at Meadow Park, the kind of pitch side announcer. He doesn't usually do the women's games, but he did that one. And Kim Little was the captain and Jonas Eidevall was the manager. Both addressed the crowd, so exactly the same format. As we saw at the Emirates, and the work that has been done to make it clear that the Emirates is the stadium for the women's team as well. That none of that's an accident. So that was all really good, and I think Clive and I spoke about this on the Patreon version of the pod. So we'll try not to repeat ourselves too much for those of you who have heard that. But essentially, it's just a nice distillation of how a stadium actually feels, because that We've Got Super Mick Arteta song, I mean, that is kind of his song, but at the same time it's kind of a song for the whole team. It's become a bit of an anthem. You don't necessarily think of it as like just his song. And I remember the first time it really went up at Villa away last season when we won 1-0, and he really got that big outpouring of love from the away end for like the first time. And obviously, like, the manager isn't on the pitch like scoring goals, and Granit Xhaka, for example, he gets to score 2 goals and get everyone sing his name and everything like that, but a coach doesn't necessarily get that. And don't get me wrong, I knew that I think at this point the majority of the fan base is very behind Arteta, but it was really, I don't want to say it was surprising, maybe I don't know. Maybe I was slightly surprised, not unpleasantly. I definitely expect him to get, don't get me wrong, I didn't think he'd get a bad reception or anything, or even an indifferent one. I thought he'd get a good one. But it was raucous. It was, it wasn't quite Ian Wright at Union Chapel, but it was close.
It was, and it went on.
And it went on
he
and on.
Would not speak. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's just really nice to get that gauge again, particularly like because we're all very online these days, and we debate things and we talk about things and we argue about things, to different, like, I'm not talking about like blazing rows or anything, but you exchange with people, you talk, and you get into the weeds, and that's what you should do. That's how you develop your thinking. That's how you have conversations. But that felt like a nice zoom out moment where it's like, wow, this crowd is really behind him, and that level of trust as well, particularly because, we didn't win the league and all of that. It would have been easy for that feeling to be cooled, but I almost felt like this was we trust you with this. And again, Clive and I spoke about this on the Patreon pod. Me and some friends were talking about Smith Rowe before the game. And I was saying, obviously David Ornstein has kind of tweeted in the last few minutes that he's definitely staying, and et cetera, but we were talking about him, and I was just like, look, I really like that player. I think he's great, but I've just moved to this level of trust with Arteta where it's like, if he doesn't want him, I'm kind of okay with that. And my position with anyone he doesn't want really is, okay, then they have to go and get someone you do want, because I've moved to that level of trust where I kind of think if we have the players that the manager wants, I think we'll be really good, because that's the trajectory that we've been on for the last 2 seasons. So yeah, and it was a nice moment for him as well to be able to get some of that as well, and I'm sure he doesn't want to get lost in that, in the season and everything, but just that moment, just after the last game of the season, that's the breath out moment, isn't it? Like, I'm sure he'll have like one day off or something. So yeah, just really nice for him. And, you know, he came on the lap of appreciation with his kids and everything. And yeah, just a nice moment just for all of us to be able to say thank you, and for him to understand that, you know, the fans have really appreciated what they've seen this season.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, he delivered the second most points in the history of the Premier League era and the most goals scored in the Premier League era by Arsenal Football Club. Like, it is an achievement. I realize that there were mistakes were made. Mistakes are made in every season. City have made mistakes. City have made mistakes. It just turns out that the team with the 115 charges is at a level of its development that we couldn't quite go to. So, yeah, I mean, I think he deserves the support that he got and the noise that he heard. And I think the Ornstein tweet on Smith Rowe is interesting, by the way. I'll say this, him staying doesn't mean suddenly he's a central cog in what we're doing. That remains to be seen. We'll have to see. I do think a fit Smith Rowe, who is at his best, makes us a much better team from a purely talent standpoint. He is not the kind of player you can just go out in the market and replace. I don't think. I think he is a special talent if he's fit and really at his best and understands his role and works at it. So we'll have to see. Clive, anything you want to tease out of the lap of appreciation, whether it's the Arteta moment, Bukayo Saka getting mobbed by kids? One of my favorite things about the lap of appreciation is always seeing professional footballers, 5 and 6 year old children, being much better at football than I have ever been or ever will be at any point in my life, as they curl them into the top corner on the Emirates pitch. You just see the incredible talent that has been passed down genetically to their children. But yeah, pieces from the lap of appreciation. The Saliba song got to run out. It's been a while since we've heard that one. That was a nice moment.
Yeah, so I haven't got a memory like Tim for every Arsenal event in the last 150 years. So
I haven't got a memory for this morning, so you're doing better than me.
I've been on loads of these lap of appreciations, and I couldn't tell you one of them, honestly. I couldn't tell you one. But what I will say, a couple of things that stood out to me. I thought the Arteta moment was the moment of the day. I thought, Granit Xhaka, we've seen players come and go. But when you see the manager get that level of appreciation, that's really important. That's really very important to where we're going directionally and what people have seen. People are not stupid. They can see things. They can understand. The word trust came up in our conversation yesterday, Tim, and we trust that he's going to continue this trajectory. We trust he's going to be ruthless enough to do what needs to be done. And that's really, really, we spent too many months and years being completely divisive in our support for the club. And when the manager, the guy that has to make all the substitutions, all the signings, all the in-game management, all the post-game interviews and pre-game press conferences, he has got many, many, many opportunities to cheese us all off. And then when it comes to it, he gets that level of support. I think that's major achievement. And I think he was taken aback by it. And there was Josh Kroenke was filming it, and I'm thinking, yeah, this is really, really good, because Josh Kroenke was last seen at Brighton looking around an empty stadium with 5 minutes to go. Right, so it's really, really important that the real Arsenal was shown. And so that was one moment of the day. And also, obviously, we're lucky enough to be, to see what's happened this season live and direct on some occasions, etc. And also some of the work that you've done, Elliot, around the charity side of things has allowed you to meet some people within the club. And we know that there is a family feeling within the club. There's lots of professional alignment, lots of really good relationships being built in the back room. The staff that work there, very special people. And when you see them on the pitch, in that collective, family, staff, all one, I thought when that picture comes out, if it's not already, I hadn't noticed that before, to that level of people. There seems to be hundreds of people on the pitch. And that shows you the people that support the players, professionally and personally, were all there. And all the people that work there, the people, their support structure was all involved. And as you know, all these people are in an extreme elite environment, and they can't get there without a sacrifice of their families. And they can't, and it's really good to see them also included. So yeah, it's a nice place at the moment. But on the soft side of things, on the professional side of things, we hope that's going to keep going forward. But the end-to-end alignment and connection, that's the word that Arteta used, wasn't it? Connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear for all of us to see, right? And after this weekend, you know what's in the pit of my stomach? I just want it to continue. Just want it to continue and get better. And there's this little Elliot fear bone that comes out every now and again that says,
"You're welcome.
I don't want this to stop." You know, I don't care how long it takes. I'm not interested. I just want us to all go on it together in a positive way. And I don't, it's going to be bumpy, right? But I don't care. I just want us to get to that better place and enjoy it, and without having the feeling that once we do get there, we're not going to want something else. And that's generally what humans are like. Man City won the league; they want the Champions League. So we're never going to be satisfied. But I want to make sure we can enjoy that experience together.
Yeah, Tim, it's hard because whatever disappointment we feel about this season, there is that little part of you that knows next season's not guaranteed to be as fun as this one was. Something unexpected can go wrong. Things can happen you don't see coming. Some team can be better than you thought they would be, and you can be worse. I mean, you look at Chelsea, and I really recommend you strongly look at Chelsea. Do it as much as possible because it's a hell of a fun thing to do. I don't think anybody saw the mess of who they are and what they would be and where this would go as quickly as it has. Tottenham, another good example and another fun one to look at. Things change very fast season to season. Leicester going down. I mean, you talked about 10 years being a long time. It's not even 10 years ago they won the league, and now they're in the championship. So it's weird because seasons are only separated by a couple of months, and it shouldn't make that much of a difference, but somehow the stories they tell are so different. I think the biggest thing that's going to happen to Arsenal Football Club is the return of Champions League football. It felt like a birthright for 20 years. When you love your club, you pay attention to what your club is doing. But let's be honest, no one pays attention to the Conference League or the Europa League. No one pays attention to it. When we were in the Champions League, I couldn't have told you who was in the final for the Europa League. The Champions League is the pinnacle of football globally. While the Premier League is the best domestic league, the Champions League is something else. We have to do well in it. We cannot. The one funny thing about the Europa League, everyone's like, oh, we should try to win it. We should go for it. But everybody also agrees that in the group stage, like, you shouldn't even play a single starter. They shouldn't even get a minute.
Yeah.
It's like the Champions League ain't that. Now, it does look like we're probably going to wind up in pot 2, thanks to a Juventus point deduction, which is a huge boost to everything in our season. I know it sounds dumb, but guys, we could have been in a group with 2 Titans and had a very difficult group stage. It also means players are playing 90 minutes, twice a week, the whole start of the season. You may now get one extra. No one's a real minnow. Well, there's some real minnows in the Champions League, but games where you can be a little more thoughtful about who you put out there. But is steel manning the squad for the Champions League and proving that we can fight on 2 fronts the big question mark? Sounds too pointed, but I'll just say it, the big question mark and the big area to address going into next season.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's one thing. Arteta's record hasn't been that good in the Europa League. I think we probably all understand there's a context around that, vis-a-vis kind of trying to do it at a 70% tilt rather than being all in. But he'll be aware of that. He's ambitious for himself as well as the club, which is absolutely right. And he won't want to be Conte. He won't want to be the guy that's like, he's good in the league, but the Champions League or Europe, he'll just crash out. Like, he doesn't want to be that guy. He's ambitious as well. And, for the club, it's important as well. Not just to be in the Champions League group stage. And by the way, I can't wait for that first home game in the Champions League next season. Yeah. I think it's going to go off when that happens. Whoever we might be playing in that game, and the first Champions League away game. I think you might need a lot of away credits to get in on that one, and that's how it should be. We should be excited to be in this competition again, and that break has probably given us that perspective. But you're right, like we need to, because we took a year off the cups this year, and I was fine with that. I'm not fine with it next year. We can't do that next year. A few more just better and some of that's with the better integration of maybe players like Tomiyasu. We could have done that with Tierney, particularly in the Europa League group stage. I think the manager has to be self-critical and say there were times where he didn't trust players enough, because that's just what you've got to do, whether you really, really want to or not. Sometimes you've just got to do that, and those are mainly your players. And obviously, in terms of squad building, we need to move to a more fluid phase when it comes to kind of interchanging. And that's why I'm really interested in some of this news that's coming out, like Nelson, like Smith Rowe. Because the thing is, it's for me, fine. If you want to keep Smith Rowe, fine. Everyone knows I think there's a real player in there. But if we keep Smith Rowe and it's the same as last season, that's a bad decision. It's a bad call. He has to, and the same with Nelson. If he keeps Nelson and Nelson signs a new contract and he's at 600 minutes next season, that's a bad decision. He needs to be keeping these players because, not based on a hunch, but because he's convinced that they can chuck in well over 1,000 minutes if needed. And if that happens, and they develop and we get more out of their talent, great. But this can't just be, yeah, he might do it, so let's just get no. And I think we've kind of seen the decision to give Nketiah a new contract last summer. I think that was expedient just in terms of versus the money to buy another one. But honestly, Nketiah is probably someone we should have just made some money out of somewhere down the line, because I'm looking at an Arteta team and I don't really see a space for Nketiah in it, and therefore ending up giving him a big contract I think has been a poor allocation of resources, really, if we're honest with ourselves. I don't want Smith Rowe and Nelson to be like that. If they're going to stay, it has to be because they're going to be big players, and that's a test for Arteta, because we haven't seen that yet. Doesn't mean he can't do it or that we doubt that he can do it, but he hasn't done it yet.
Yeah, well said, Tim. Clive, how about you? It's not about the Cups next season. That's not what I mean, but is it about fighting on multiple fronts and making sure that the team can simultaneously try to get to a point total that feels almost unfair from an expectation level? I mean, it's unfair to ask any team going into a season, you have to get into the 90s. It's what we probably have to do. And can also be a credible contender for and participant in the Champions League.
Yeah, so touch on the Smith Rowe stuff firstly. I think Arteta said, it's not just about buying players, it's about improving the players that you have. And my mind just went straight away to Vieira, Smith Rowe. That's the two players that are in my mind. They're major investments in their own ways, in different ways. And we haven't got enough out of both of them. And they're both 22, 23. So, but what we have control of the assets. I think that's very important. The Eddie discussion, to me, we didn't pay a penny for him. He's on a slightly heavy contract, but if we were to go out and buy another centre forward, it costs a lot more than keeping Eddie. Right? So that sort of makes sense to me. And we have control of the assets. So we get a market opportunity, we can do something with it. Well, we want to move away from the period where we had no control over the assets, or if we knew they were dead assets, we had to give them away. So we're in control of the situation. Even the Smith Rowe release today could be saying to a prospective buyer that, by the way, he's going to go to the Euros for the England 21s in the summer. He's going to hopefully kick it there, refine his confidence, don't have a holiday, come back to pre-season 4 kgs lighter like Granit Xhaka did. We're in the US watching him rip it, and suddenly our whole situation changes, right? And he's pushing Trossard's minutes out, and we're sending Vieira out on loan, and that's what can happen very, very quickly. Well, it's down to him. It's not down to us. It's down to him. The onus is on the player. You've got a contract. You've got a shirt number. Start running. Start working. Start making sure these sub-performances mean something. If you're looking for a good example, how about looking at Reece Nelson? Look at his performances. Look at how he is grabbing the opportunity. Looking how he's rising up our thought processes and up the pecking order, and potentially got a 4-year contract. We've got +1 on the end. Is he going to play every week? Don't know. But we have control of the asset. rather than Brighton nicking for free. So I like what we're doing here. But the onus is down. Tim's right in what he said up to a point. I think Arteta needs to expand the minutes of some of these players. But I also think it's down to the players to make it impossible for the manager not to pick him. They've got to do it. We haven't had massive rows on the podcast about said player needing X more minutes. There've been one or two. There always will be, right? Because we're fans. But nothing massive. Nothing massive. And I want these guys' form to be so good that we're having in-depth conversation about which players should be playing for a certain game because they fit that horse for that course. Do you know what I mean? And we haven't had a lot of that this year. And watching some of these players come off the bench, they've done fine. But we all know the reason why we're not where we want to be is the gap from that first crew to the crew in behind is still a little bit too big for me. And so coach some of that away, system some of that away, motivate some of that away with competition, and then see where we end up.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think we'll start to wrap up here, but Tim, just in terms of how you'll think about this overall, I mean, I loved the weekend. And by the way, like, for the people that don't get to go to the Emirates, for the people that don't get to be there, there is something really special about hearing the songs in person and seeing the players in the flesh and looking at the way we play and where they stand and how they kick and and how they run and how it's just, I can't explain it. Like, it's just different the way it transmits. And it's, when I've been there this season, and again, it's not like I've been there a ton. I've been there two home games and one away game, but you can really see the thoughtfulness about the way we play and you can see how coached we are is the best way I can put it. We've taken a huge stride. The problem with progress is it tends to be judged on the results, and sports are a results-based business, which is totally fair. But that can cause you to forget the progress. The distance we've traveled in 2 seasons is remarkable. And it's not just because, someone popped up as a 30-goal scorer and we got dragged into a good position. Like, we are a better team now in terms of talent, in terms of the way we're coached. I will remember this season as a massively, massively enjoyable part of my life as an Arsenal supporter. I have said it on many podcasts before. You don't have to view it as success. You can view it as progress. But for me, I'm okay to call it a success because at the end of the day, if all you care about is winning a trophy or being champions, then your season starts off as probably being a failure and ends as being a failure for everyone but 1 or 2 teams. And I think then you don't get to enjoy beating Spurs twice and beating United and beating Liverpool and pounding Chelsea twice. And you don't get to enjoy the Reece Nelson winner. And you don't get to enjoy the Emi Martinez, own goal winner. And you don't get to enjoy the Nketiah winner because we didn't win the title. And that is a hollow way to live your life and support a football club. Again, it's not to say drop your standards, don't care about winning. That's not my point. My point is the amount of joy this season gave me is much, 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 much more than just about anything I've experienced for Arsenal in a decade. And so I'm comfortable calling it a success because I just don't think we can be football supporters and say the only team that gets to say their season is a success is the one that finishes on top of the table. But if that's how people want to see it and they see anything else as dropping their standards, fair enough. I just think that I cannot express any more emphatically how much joy this season brought me for a long, long period of it. And I think the only downside, of course, is that the reason we didn't win the title is we had a clustered period towards the end of not being quite so good. Yeah. And you know how it is. You string 2 bad results together and football fans get pretty antsy. We strung 4 of them together, or so to speak, and that definitely took some of the shine off the good feeling at some points. But are you comfortable calling it a success? Will you look back on this season 4, 5, 6 seasons from now in that way?
Yeah, I definitely will. It actually reminds me a bit of Arsene Wenger's first season, 96-97, where we've been quite uncertain for a few years, and then Wenger came in and everything just felt lighter. The football got better, and then you just got this sense, actually now I feel like we're getting somewhere. I feel like we're evolving into challengers. But your point there about seasons, I mean, there are 2 points to that. I think the happiest supporters in the league at the moment will be like Newcastle, They didn't win anything. Well, maybe on the final day, Nottingham Forest. I was there at the final whistle last weekend, and they're pretty happy because 17th was kind of their aim coming into the season. They got it. Brighton have got European football. None of those teams won anything, but they kind of achieved and exceeded their targets, and that's very important. And look at the last season. We actually did win something, the 2020 FA Cup. Like, the context for me was slightly different because my daughter was born the day after, but something I remember for the rest of my life, as a one-off kind of day, and that's exactly what cup finals are, and that's why they're so great and they can salvage seasons. But that season was horrible. That actual season that it came in, where we start so badly and Emery's sacked and Raul is packed off, and Arteta comes in, and then we get COVID and all the state, like lousy, horrible season, and kicks off with Ozil. Just, I will not remember that season fondly at all. But we won the FA Cup at the end of it, right? But that season, the journey wasn't that fun. Whereas this season, we haven't won anything, but the journey's been much, much more fun. And look, like I say, that will only sustain people for so long, which is why I think the Cups become important again next season. Because look, if we finish second or third next season, but we put the FA Cup or even the League Cup on the sideboard as well, watching the women's team this season, to your point earlier about how things can change, they finished 1 point off Chelsea last season. They finished 11 off this season because 4 of their players got ACLs. That stuff can happen, but they put a trophy on the sideboard as well, and that makes you feel very, very different about finishing third. When you throw in a domestic cup, so there'll be like a different set of expectations. But the journey this season, I think I will remember it a bit like Wenger's first season, where it's like, this is what it's like to enjoy this again, and this is what it's like to be fun. And look, that was 96, 97. If next season turns out to be 97, 98, you won't hear any complaining from me.
No, I don't think you will. I think we can leave it there. Clive, I will give you a final comment just on your excitement to have a couple of months to reflect. I mean, the funny thing is you get no time, right? The transfer window is the busiest season of
it's my favorite
content
time.
And enthusiasm. It's Clive's favorite time because you dream of a future and you get to find out what players are about. And we're all going to be in LA and New York. It's going to be brilliant. But like, I do think it's nice to just take a breath and say, wow, this was quite the journey. I loved going on this journey. I really, really did. And the funny thing is it started in preseason. If you really think about it, because I looked back on my preseason predictions, and we will cover those in another pod, but I was like, wow, I predicted us to finish better than I would have expected and do more. And I realized because we did those predictions on the heels of preseason, and you could already see it. You could already see things were snapping into place and changing. So it's been a really good journey. I think the trajectory will continue to point in the same direction. How are you going to reflect on this as we turn towards your favorite time of the season?
Yeah, this is my favorite time, the transfer window and preseason. Funny enough, I love a preseason to see what the experiments are and see what shape people are in. So yeah, I do think maybe not for this pod, but maybe for future pods over the summer, that discussion around what success looks like could come sharply into view if Manchester United change ownerships and, for example, have Qataris in there. We see what's happening with Newcastle and Man City. What is success going to be? Is it going to be, look at the season West Ham have had. Nearly sacked their manager. They're hanging with him. They're going to their first European final in 41 years. What a fantastic season for that club in the end. If they win that final, they get Europa League. Now, football's not going to be what it used to be, I'm afraid. We're going to have to take what we take from the game. Brighton, first time in Europe, fantastic. Luton Town, the club closest to where I live, coming up to the Premier League. I mean, this is like, football is just a broad, beautiful church, right? And I absolutely love it. And just want to open my mind up to the different ways to achieve what we want to achieve. And all I can say from an Arsenal perspective, we are right there with the right people doing a good job, and I just want to keep doing it, you know. And they seem to care as much as we do, which is again an accusation that we've put to the club in recent years, right? So just want to keep going, Elliot. That's all I want to keep going, and take a little bit of a breath, as you say. But I'm on YouTube already, mate. So look out. Look out. I'm ready to go.
He's ready. Well, yeah, I'm ready as well. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I hope some people will join us over on the Patreon side of things, where we're going to be doing a lot of really cool stuff. And remember, that's the best place to get tickets to live events and have access to that, and see some of the transfer content we're going to be doing. But honestly, it's just as long as you're with us for these seasons, it's so special. I'm so appreciative that we got to share it with you, whatever portion of the season we did share together. And I'm so excited to share the transfer summer nonsense, and then the next journey we go on. And that's the thing, there's this expression in football, we go again, but it is really the beautiful thing in life. You don't get to go again, right? You don't get to restart. You don't get a fresh start in the fall, in the late summer, to start your life over again and reset. But football gives it to you, that renewal, that conclusion, that finality, and that renewal. And we get to experience that together. Thank you to everyone who outstretched a hand or a couple of arms for a handshake and a hug. As I said, thanks to everybody who was with us along for this season. Thank you to everybody who will continue to be with us in the future, and for putting up with us and laughing with us and shrugging your shoulders at Paul's jokes, or even for those of you who laugh at them as well. That's hugely appreciated by him. I know, sorry he couldn't be on this pod, but he'll be on one in the future. And to Scott, who a lot of people got to meet at the weekend, and just to Andrew and James, obviously, thanks for their friendship and the collaboration. And to Clive, who's on Twitter at ClivePFC. Thanks, bud.
Thank you very much.
And Tim, who's on Twitter at Stominator. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, my pleasure as always. And thank you to everyone, both fellow panelists and listeners, because if I've enjoyed this season even more, it's because of all of you guys and getting to relive all of this. So yeah, thanks to everyone.
Well said. Can't say it any better than that. So all I will say is, as I always do this time of year, we love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10 transfer window nil.